Pacific Viewpoint is proudly brought to you by South Pacific Loans, caring for the community's financial needs. Call us today on 0800 88 98 88.
Good evening and welcome to Pacific Viewpoint. Tonight is part 2 of how Pastor Luka Robertson, a Samoan, and wife Jo, a European, faced and handled the challenges with their cross-cultural marriage. We all know marriage in general poses many challenges, and cross-cultural marriages provide no exception. Before we move on, let me show you a few clips from last week.
When we were dating, Luka would not eat at my home because everyone was European and he didn't eat in front of Europeans. And I wouldn't eat at his house because I didn't know what the food was. I was like, what is that?
She used to call corned beef cat food.
I know.
I said to her, have this because my mum was watching. I said, eat this because my mum's watching. Because what's that? I said, corned beef. She goes, look like cat food. And my mother would look around. And like, you know, I mean, how do you build a relationship with your mother-in-law when you call it cat food?
What did you find difficult,
I
Jo?
found that Luka as a person was very hard. And I say hard because he's very like, this is the way we're going to do it. And, you know, I'll give you an example. You don't answer back to the man.
Samoan way?
Yeah. So the man tells you what to do and you don't say anything. In my family, you discuss things and then you come to an agreement. So he'd tell me what to do and I'd say, no, I'm going to do it like this. And he'd be like, no, you don't do it like that. You don't answer me back. You do it my way. And I was like, no, I don't.
How about the language? Are you both bilingual?
I'm bilingual and Jo is lingual.
I can't speak Samoan. I can understand a little bit more now, but I haven't learned the language.
You don't want to learn Samoan?
It's not that I don't want to, I just think because Luka and I have always spoken English, that he would have to speak to me in Samoan or I'd have to go and study it, and having the time and, you know, just putting that in, it just hasn't been a priority. And most of our life we're around European-speaking or English-speaking people, even with the Polynesians that were around, so it just hasn't happened.
How did you decide which culture you wanted to emphasise in your home, including which language the children will speak, religion, custom, culture, you know, the rest of it? How do you do it?
I think it's just automatically that it's European.
Yeah, we kind of talked about some things that, like we wanted to put our first child into Samoan preschool when we first thought, oh, let's put her into kindy or let's look at that, but the option was full-time or not at all. And because I was only going to be working part-time, it just didn't suit us to do that because I really wanted to be a mum. And so that kind of closed that door to our children speaking Samoan at that time. We have talked about cultural customs. There are some things Luka teaches them that, you know, for instance, one of the things I didn't know when I married him was that when you're talking to a Samoan, you should sit at their level or, you know, and we don't have that. We just stand and talk to someone sitting down or go on the ground.
Not their level, on the ground.
Yeah, or when you're going, when you're walking in front, say, you know, excuse me. And so lots of those things he just automatically teaches the children, don't do that, that's rude, you must do this, especially around the Samoans. And suddenly we'll be in a Samoan context and our children are suddenly learning things they didn't know because it suddenly shows up. And
my parents don't help too. Like I try and teach them Samoan, they say to me, don't do that, they're palangis, they'll be fine, everyone understands. I'm like, you used to give me hiding because of those things and now you're not even supporting me.
So how about the discipline side of it? Samoan way?
Samoan all the way, man. Samoan all the stuff. The jandal comes out, sister.
That is actually one of our biggest challenges, raising our children. It was probably we just come from such different backgrounds.
I find sometimes the palangi styles, they talk the kids to death. Don't do that. Don't do that. And Samoan's just one. Don't do that. Bang. That's it. You know? As where Joe's like, okay, we'll take a marble away from you. You know, we have time out. Your anga time out. What's that? You know, so had to really adjust, though.
Any other issues raising cross-cultural children you see?
The extended family, sometimes it's an issue. Like now they see things the Samoan side of the family, they do things like this. Why do they do that? And how come they do that? And when we're there, they do it different. You know, things like that with Luka's side of the family. They see that. They think Grandpa is rich because when they see Grandpa, he gives them $10 or $20, and that's rich, you know.
Your parents.
Whereas my parents will buy presents, you know, for your birthday
once
and
every
Christmas.
blue moon.
Yeah, it will be birthday and Christmas. But Grandpa is just...
my dad?
You know, if Grandpa has money, he will give it. And he laughs. He thinks it's so funny that the kids think he's rich just because they get money.
My son's 5, right? So my son couldn't sleep. So he said to my dad, Grandpa, I'm hungry. It's 11 o'clock at night. So my dad takes him to McDonald's and they're having a meal inside McDonald's. You know, you just, from a European perspective, you just don't do that. But I'm like...
Would that worry you?
No, I don't mind. I think I've learnt that I've kind of had this rule from the time when we go to Wanganui and we are with Luka's family, then it's kind of like that old saying, when in Rome, do what the Romans do. If our kids stay up late and they're doing things and they're having a great time, I don't mind. But usually it's holidays. It's different if they're in a school routine. When Grandpa comes to stay and we've got school, we'll still go to bed. But I don't mind some of that, and I think we've learnt to be a bit flexible. That's been hard for my mum and dad sometimes, because my mum was like, oh, your kids go out a lot. They're very social. And I was like, Polynesian families are very social, Mum. They're out a lot more than our children. We're in the middle ground here. But I don't mind that. I think that's cool. I love the fact that Grandpa wants to take the kids and do fun stuff because, you know, they don't... Yeah, they're real special. And you don't know how long your parents are around for to do stuff like that. So
it is a challenge with in-laws because my parents, they would talk to me and they would ask me permission, as I find sometimes European parents that just tell you what they think.
Yeah.
Now, I've always struggled with that.
Yeah.
My culture, there's an honour of, you know, they don't want to embarrass the other person. So there's a, it's a challenge. It's a real challenge, eh? So, so my parents, if they want to talk to Joe about an issue, they would ask me. So I have to determine yes or no.
But they're usually you always said no. You just let them talk to you. Which is that unusual, because most, I understand that the mother-in-law may tell the daughter-in-law off, you're not doing things, you're not looking after my son. But he would never allow them to do that. My mum just does, you know, which is probably not very helpful. And I suppose one of our greatest conflicts has been with that kind of, what boundaries do you put with your own parents?
All right, okay. That will be my next question. What was the biggest or perhaps the hardest barriers that you both faced with cross-cultural marriage?
Yeah, and I do think it's family. It's extended family.
Yeah?
Yeah, it is for us. And it's money in that situation. So family, like what they say and what they think you should do. Like, you should do it this way because, you know, you're a Samoan, and so Joe should just go with what you're saying. And my family, because they would say, you're not, you know, maybe you should put the kids to bed at this time, or you shouldn't go out and, you know, that kind of stuff. Or, you know, Luka should learn this. And I was like, you're not his mother, that kind of stuff.
The Samoan side, you know, when you have whakalawe-laves.
What is a whakalawe-lawe?
Like if you got family problems and someone dies, and so in our culture, if someone dies in our family, we gather together and then the head says, okay, this family, you give us $500, the other
like
family...
Like a gift.
Like a gift, yeah. So, and it's not a negotiation, it's just that our parents tell us to do it and that's it. So I'd have to come to Jo and say, hey, they want money, and she'd be like, no way. You know? And I said, no. I said, this is, you know. But, well, we had to decide what we wanted to do as a family. And that was the hardest. Yeah. So we wouldn't say no, but we would say, listen, we would give you, instead of a $500, we'll give you $100. And then I had to decide that I would take the brunt of all the stuff for my family. But that was the decision I made.
That was hard.
So then my nickname was called the White Samoan. Do I look white to you, sister? So that was my nickname, yeah. Because they thought, because of my palangi wife...
Who gave you the nickname?
My family. Yeah, because of my palangi wife, I've become palangi. As where I should be as a Samoan, tell my wife, this is what we do. And so my mum said to me, you know, you've lost your mana, you've lost your authority. Soft. You know, look what she's done to you. She's twisted your mind. I said, I know. Look at my shirt, it's still the same.
But I felt that a lot of Polynesians, they were always in debt for family things. Like, they're always going to borrow more money to pay for someone else's wedding and funeral. And I just, even biblically, the Bible says you shouldn't owe someone money. And so to me it was, we were already in debt when we got married because we had, you know, been students and we were starting out. We needed to get on top of that. And ultimately we have been able to buy a house. And that is because we've had to say no. And on the way, we've said no to people that might be far, far distant cousins. If it was an immediate family member, or like when Luka's mother died, it was a non-issue. We were prepared to give and to do what we could, and quite a bit. And I think by then we had said, okay, this is kind of the order that we will work it in. If they are a close family member, then we will give, you know, what we can.
We set our own boundaries.
And we did. As a couple, we said, you know, actually, if it's so far down the line, I know you call that family, but if it's that far out and you never see these people, then actually we're going to have to draw some boundaries, because otherwise it would be every month or every week or whatever. And it came to the same with bills. If we can't pay our own bills, how can we go and pay your bills because you haven't got the money? Most of the time when we were first married, we just didn't have spare money. We had little children, we had very tight budget.
So what were some other cultural issues that brought challenges?
Religious issues. Like, we had different, I guess because of our culture, we would have different perspectives on theology. My parents were senior pastors, they were ministers. So, yeah, you know, they had their different thoughts on how church or family should be run.
So do you think our cultures affect our view of Christianity?
Yes.
A major, that's a major thing. In our Samoan culture, especially ministers, because I'm a minister, I'm highly esteemed. Now, I'm just me.
I mean, in the Samoan culture, I think it's the same with the Tongan culture.
So when we go
too.
to a funeral, and I'm with my dad, and we're both ministers, they have their own tables. They expect us to sit together. Well, I'm not that way inclined. So I will sit with my wife because she's the only palangi in the funeral. So my dad would sit there, and they would ask me to go up. And in fact, they would get on the mic, and so you know, there was just a real control type of situation. And I had to make my own decision, so yeah, it's a challenge. Like, I don't see myself highly esteemed. I just see myself as just like everybody else. As we're in our culture, no, you can't think like that.
How about you, Joe?
An example, his mum, when I first went to their house, who was not a fan of mine at that time, said, Joe, you must wear a skirt in my house. I was like, oh, okay, no problem, I can do that. So I did that kind of thing. But later she said I didn't have to. So there was lots of things like that, you know, the wearing the skirts in church and learning a whole lot of, you know, things that happen in the services that are very different to how we do church or how I'd grown up in church. Almost I saw Samoan culture as maybe 50 years ago in the European church, and so I was like, wow, this is so different. This is maybe what maybe my grandparents went to church like. It's just totally different to how I was. But I think some of the things like honouring your pastors and that's good, but I don't want us to be people who suck people dry. I just don't think that that's the way God intended it. I think that we are meant to give because we give to the Lord, not to the pastor, because we're giving to God to build his church. And so as a pastor and a pastor's wife, obviously our church is multicultural. We have Samoans, but we have Europeans, we have others. Europeans don't esteem the pastor. They should probably honour the pastor more. But if they have a question, they'll just bowl up and ask it straight. And to a Samoan, that's like, how rude. Why would you ask that? You don't have a right. That's just, you know, you've crossed a boundary. We just don't have the same probably restrictions, and we don't even have the same honour. And somewhere in the middle, there's probably a good ground. You know, there's an honour and a respect for that person. We pay them, but we don't, you know, sacrifice everything we have for that person, because in some ways that can easily become worshipping a person rather than God. And as pastors, we have had to kind of cross some of those now. You know, if people want to give us stuff, we have to work out, you know, well, how's that going to affect their family? You know, small things are okay, you know, but some things are not okay. You know, so
just give us corned beef. That's all you need to do.
That would be good for Luka.
I find it hard because, like, I talk to my family. They talk to me so different, like, because I'm a minister.
Oh, right.
But I try and talk to them as a, you know, I'm just a family member. But yeah, especially the older generation. So they'll talk to me as a minister is what these are my uncles and aunties. So I struggle with that quite a bit because I love them as my uncles and aunties. So they'll try and do the honouring thing and they'll sit on the ground when I'm standing. I mean, to me, that's a no-no.
Is that because you have exposed yourself to the palangi culture and the palangi way of thinking?
That probably play a major part into that, because in my Samoan culture, if you're uncle and auntie, we honour you as the nephews and nieces. So then to have it turned around because you're a minister, I struggle with it.
I think some of our conflicts also did come back to cultural, you know, and so we were learning a whole lot of new stuff that we didn't know. So I was learning a whole lot of things about Samoan culture, and I was like, why do you do that? That, you know, I don't agree with that. And he was like, well, we're just going to do it. And I was like, well, hang on, what if I don't agree? You know, so those kind of things started to come into view, which I suppose we just never thought about some of them. And he probably assumed I would just go with some stuff, and I just wasn't going to agree with things that I maybe didn't think were right. And so we were having to learn what is actually the right thing for us as a couple to do, which was quite different to just because your family does it, we should do it. Actually, we came back to, well, now we're a family, so what are we going to start to model? And that, I think, in the first few years, we had to start to make some decisions. And Luka, he was quite ruthless with his own family, unfortunately, for them. And he did it to protect me. I didn't realise how much until later, but I think him doing that meant that he really honoured me as a wife.
So after you got married, did you two stay with your parents, or did you go straight in and find a flat?
Found a flat, because we knew straight away if you don't find a flat, it's just going to be...
Also, both our families
both our parents
live away.
They didn't live in Auckland, so it really helped us.
A lot of people have their parents, you know, breathing down living next door, or in the same house, or down the road, coming over, you know, being involved. We haven't had that.
I'll be with my mum on the phone.
He used to ring his mum all the time when he first got married.
She didn't iron my clothes, you know, to cook like Samoan woman would, you know. It was just terrible.
Like
terrible.
First year marriage, I was like, well, I work full time, so we should share the load. And he was thinking, what's going on here? You know, that's not what I bargained for. But he didn't know that I was like, we're equal, you know, because we share the load. So it was just, you know, lots of stuff to learn.
Mo lafo ina tupe Samoa ma Australia matonga. Piki tupe Australia ma Samoa pe tu fo I social accounts I New Zealand nei. Whaatau tongi nei piki a mau. Whaia siaki talaina I le malai lele. Talaina o mātou tupe a pia I le Nick Money Transfer. Po sa vai I le Marie Money Transfer. O le mātou tuatusi o le numera fitu Princess Street o tau. Talaina le mātou ofisa le afa le valu le taeao I le lima I le afiafi. Asonga fua I le asfareile. Ma le afa le valu le taeao le afa sulu le astona. Pafsota I mai le mātou telefoni I le lua fitu o whāwalu o le lua fitu ono lua tolu whātasi. Mo nisi whamatalanga whautai tele Samoa I laulalako mai.
I came from Tonga in 2006. I need a future here with my family. I decided to buy a house. I went to the bank and they turned me down. So I went to South Pacific Loan and they decided to give me a second chance. So they upgrade my credit, and then I went back to the bank and they offered me a loan. And then I buy this house and here I am today. I highly recommend anyone who haven't tried South Pacific Loan, try South Pacific Loan, because they give me a chance to be here with my house today.
Give us a call or come and see us, because we understand the Pacific people.
What are the most significant benefits of cross-cultural marriages?
You've got two cultures coming together. You've got the best of both worlds all the time.
In terms of benefits, you learn how to get along with other people. And I feel that as a Kiwi growing up, I had real judgmental attitude, or not that I meant to be, but I just naturally thought certain things about Pacific Islanders when I was at school, what sort of jobs they did. I just had these thoughts.
Stereotypes?
Stereotypes that marrying someone from another culture that I'd had stereotypes about, I suddenly realised, well, even if that's so, if that's the facts, this is the underlying reasons. And so you learn to be different about what you actually think.
What do you find fascinating about Samoan's culture?
Everything.
Yes.
Everything.
Probably, I don't know about fascinating, but the things that I've learnt and enjoy about Samoan culture is just the vibrancy. Everything is about people and food and getting together and enjoying each other, and I like that. I think that's a really neat part of the culture.
How about you, Luka?
I think for a lot of Europeans, they've brought a lot of discipline to our side of things. Samoa's very laid back. Because I like structure now, I like discipline, I like different perspectives. But I love being Samoan. Yeah. Bringing Samoan culture into another culture, I mean, you bring bits and pieces from each culture, but I guess for me, I can only say because I'm Samoan, I've seen it plays a major part. Yeah.
Is there any aspect of the Samoan culture that makes you frustrated?
Sometimes the unstructured nature of a lot of things, like, you know, run on whenever, can go as long as you want because everyone can have a say, and it's a great thing. But sometimes the frustration for me is sometimes the lack of organisation or like the lack of boundaries. Talking about budgeting, you know, there's no kind of planning forward. We live for the day. If we've got bread, that's great. If we don't, we, you know, see what we can get from our neighbour. It's just little things like that probably are very foreign to me, and I would get frustrated with that. Luka's kind of accommodated me quite well there. I think also being a teacher and having taught Polynesian children, I see the potential in the children, and sometimes their family doesn't understand how to support that the best they could. And I guess for me as a mum, I wanted to make sure my children had that understanding of how to incorporate culture and make it the best they could.
Okay. Is there any aspect of the palangi culture that makes you annoyed?
Joe's mother.
I knew he was going to say that. I knew he was going to say that.
I think there's sometimes I'm frustrated where there is an independence. I think there's a lack of honour. You know, honour to me, even culturally but biblically, it plays a big part. You know, we honour our parents, we honour the adults, we honour those in leadership, we honour those in authority, and I think that frustrates me because once you put that into place and you've got these other amazing attributes, man, you can be a powerful tool.
So how would you describe your marriage? Is it one way more than the other, or best of both?
I think they say there's always three sides to a marriage.
Three
so
sides?
my side, there's someone in the middle. I'm very happy, you know, because my wife brings so much into this marriage. I love my marriage. I love the God in our marriage. I love our children. And I feel that we're a new generation that's paving a way for others who can be mixed, you know, in mixed marriages. And it hasn't been easy, but it's been worthwhile. Maybe.
Same to you?
Yeah, I would say that for us, if you're talking whether we're more Samoan, more European, we're more European in a lot of ways. But what I do love is the fact that we've brought cool things from both cultures together and made it work. And I think ultimately, like Luka said, our glue is God. And if we didn't pray together and solve problems by saying, what do you think would work best, because what do you think would honour God and what would be best in our Christian perspective of this, then I think that's probably what's made it work for us. When it comes to problem solving, when it comes to everything, we just have to take a step back and not you're the Samoan, I'm the European, but actually what's going to work here, especially with children, especially with the fact that we're now a blended culture, marriage and family, and our children are going to be raised in such a way that they need to value the good parts of every culture, but they need to know there are weaknesses too. You know.
You're saying that if you do not have God in your relationship and in your family, this probably disaster.
Yeah.
I think it would be.
Yeah.
I think
Absolutely.
So.
I think it'd be disastrous.
Yeah.
Because we're very strong people.
Yeah,
we're very strong-minded leaders. And so when God's the glue, it brings the humility. Someone has to back down.
On both parts.
On both parts. But also, we have to be more Christ-like, caring, loving, humble. So once you put that into your family, it makes things better.
Cross-cultural marriage is a bad idea, or do you think they can work?
I think
I'd say to my kids, marry palangi, but I hate the money. You're fine.
We don't think they're a bad idea, but we do see couples of cross-cultural relationships that may be a bad idea. And why I say that is because we've met people who do different religions, and that's not always an ideal blending.
So is it okay to marry somebody from a different culture, but you do not recommend somebody from a different religion?
No, I wouldn't recommend that. That's a major thing for us, that we've got the same spiritual ground. I think we can pray together, we talk together. That's one of the common things that's held us together. Cross-cultural marriage can work if you have good, solid principles and foundations in it. And for us, that's been both being committed Christians, having God there. I think that cross-cultural can be really bad if you don't have good foundations to it, if you don't have flexibility, if you're not prepared to give and take, you know, like you can't just say it's all my way or the highway, because then it's never going to work. And no marriage will work with that mentality.
Luka, you're a pastor.
Yeah.
And why on earth would God call you to marry a palangi?
Yeah, that's a good question. This is a God-ordained marriage. Yeah. God knows who's the best person for you. Whether you're palangi Samoan, palangi. And when you pray, say, God, who's the best person for me? Not if I marry another culture, who's the best person for me? God will put that in place. Yeah, and that's what's made this marriage work. This has been a God factor.
You're going to cry.
No, I'm not.
He's all teary-eyed.
No, because this thing just flew in my eye.
So for anyone out there watching our program, they are contemplating marrying somebody outside their race, what would be the best advice from you two?
I definitely think that you do need to find common ground. What things do you both value? You know, and if you're going to have children, how are you going to raise your children? What about in some cultures giving away your child? You know, for me that was just a no-go zone. I'm not going to give my babies away. But for some people that's what they do. Are you happy to do that? Are you happy to have parent involvement the way that our culture does it? Those sorts of things are good to talk about, and then make some guidelines. Is this what we're happy to do? Because I think you can think about some of those things before you make a decision.
You can't separate yourself from being who you are. So I'm Samoan, I'll always be Samoan. So I would see that as I'm bringing that into my marriage that'll help it grow. If they're from a different culture, you really need to sit with other couples and ask them the hard questions. How did it work, just like you're asking us? So that when you fully understand what you're getting yourself into, at least there's an awareness of what you need to, you know, put together. So
the danger is you don't see some of the stuff that may come into your relationship, like particularly the financial issues and stuff. And if you don't explore it and you walk into it a little bit more blind than maybe I was, you are going to hit some really tough times. And I do know couples who've broken up over things like that. So you do have to do your homework a little bit more than just, oh, you're lovely, I'll think you'd be a great person in life. Yeah.
Pastor Luka, Joe, thank you for your time.
thank you.
Awesome.
Well, that's all we have time for on tonight's program. I would love to hear your feedback on our discussion, and you can do that by emailing us on myviewpoint@pacifica.tv. And if you missed or want to watch previous episodes, you can view them on our website, and that is www.pacifica.tv. Click on Pacific Viewpoint and then leave a comment. See you next time. Bye for now.